Om Tadekam Smaramastadekam Bhajamah Tadekam Jagat Sakshi Rupam Namamah Sadekam Nidhanam Niralambamisham Bhavam Bodhipotam Sharanyam Rajamaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. On that alone do we meditate, that alone do we worship, to that alone, the witness of the universe, do we bow. To that one who is our sole eternal support, the self-existent Lord, the raft to safety across the ocean of this world, do we come for refuge. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning. My pranams to Swami Vivekananda and Mataji Sevapranji, and greetings to all of you. We have started this morning session with a very moving and profound hymn on the Lord Shiva, written by Girish Chandra Ghosh, the Bohemian disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. And he wrote this song, as it were, having the direct vision of Shiva, of the divine reality as manifesting in the form of Shiva. Let me read the translation. Absorbed, plunged in the deepest meditation, seated in yogic stillness, appearing like a limitless peak amidst boundless snows, he is the sole existence, surrounded by the silence of the final dissolution. Even fire, in fear, hides itself within the ashes. The crescent moon is no more, only formless darkness remains. There is neither one nor two. All of nature stands stupefied. Time stands still in the ever-present now. The sky-crowned Lord has absorbed all space into himself. Only one Lord remains, the eternal, the true, the perfect knowledge, Maheshwara. So what a description. And the line, of course, that I particularly strikes me for our topic today is that line, Kala Baddha Vartamani, which means time has stopped. We are in the present moment. This is the ever-present now, with time stopped when we have the vision of Shiva. And Swami Shivananda, Mahapurush Maharaj, one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, he loved this song. And when it was sung in his presence, deeply moved, he noted, first of all, Girish must have had the grace of the Lord to have a kind of vision of Shiva, to write this hymn. And then he pointed out, when meditation is very deep, one loses all sense of past and future. There is simply consciousness of the present, and that vaguely. That is why Girish Babu wrote, time stands still in the ever-present now. Then he points out, he says further, when the mind is lost in samadhi, when the mind enters the highest samadhi, then there is no consciousness even of the present, not to speak of past and future. It is a state beyond all three, past, present, and future. And that state cannot be described. So our topic today is Stop the Clock, Meet Eternity. I tried to come up with a catchy title, and I'm not sure if it works fully, but the idea is that we are bound in time. Can we escape time? How do we get out of time? Can we experience the ever-present now that's alluded to in this song? Mahapurushji hints that it is only in the deepest meditation that we can do that. But I think we can learn to meet eternity, to meet the ever-present now in our daily lives, in our daily experience, through training our mind. So that's what I want to talk about today. And a little discussion about time, and we're going to hear some good stories about Swami Vivekananda. So, hi Mom. So first of all, what is time? What is time? We all live within time, and yet mostly we don't question it. We don't think about it. It's just part of our experience. The dictionary definition is kind of amusing. A non-spatial continuum, a continuum that's not in space. It's a non-spatial continuum in which events occur in apparently irreversible succession. So one thing happens after another, and you can't do it backwards. From the past to the present to the future, or an interval connecting 2 points on this continuum. It's a kind of interesting definition. And then we have a more common sense or simpler definition. Time is what clocks measure. The clocks measure time, right? The clock is ticking and it's ticking and it's ticking. And we have some kind of common sense idea of some universal clock somewhere in the heart of the universe that's ticking and ticking and ticking and marking out time. And everything is taking place. All events, all thoughts, all actions are taking place within that unchanging, measured passage of time. Like we have the atomic clock, probably in Washington, D.C., somewhere in a bunker, and it's measuring the time. That's the exact time. But this seemingly common sense notion of time turns out to be incorrect. As we know, Einstein's genius uncovered the fact that time changes according to our rate of motion. The faster we go, the slower our clock goes in relation to a clock that's not moving. It doesn't make sense, does it? But it's actually experimentally proved, and the satellites now which are above the Earth, which enable us to whip out our mobile phone and look on a map and find out exactly where we are, those satellites, their clocks have to be set differently from our clocks because they're moving fast. Otherwise, it won't. They won't be. Our phones and the satellites won't be able to talk with each other. So time is relative, and from the psychological standpoint, also we know this is true, right? Sometimes time passes slowly, like maybe when we're sitting in the dentist's chair, and 10 minutes can seem like 2 hours. And at other times, maybe we're reading a thrilling novel, and the time, a whole afternoon can go by just like that. Swami Vivekananda, an amusing story of Vivekananda in San Francisco. He, just before ascending the platform to give a lecture on India, which was so dear to his heart, he said to his assistant and usher, Mr. Allen, when I get started on the subject of India, I never know when to stop. If I go on too long, attract my attention. So Swamiji began at 8 o'clock to speak on India, and he got thoroughly into his subject. And at 10 o'clock, Mr. Allen decided probably we should let him know that it's time to, that it's getting late. So he held up his watch, his pocket watch, and he swung it like a pendulum back and forth from the back of the hall. And Swamiji immediately noticed it, and he said, "There they are, swinging the watch for me to stop when I have hardly got started." And then, as Mr. Allen said, he often told this story later, he said, he went right on with the lecture. So that's the relative time. Of course, for those who could attend a lecture by Swami Vivekananda, that was also an immersive experience in which it was a spiritual transmission being received. So everyone would be lifted up into a rarefied state and surely wouldn't notice the time passing either. So as we will see, Swami Vivekananda was not in time. He was really, at least a good part of his mind was ever established in the timeless. But for us, we are caught. We are caught in time. We can't escape it. It stops for no one and for nothing. As far as relativity goes, and Einstein's understanding that time and space are not separate principles. It's a space-time continuum. Vedanta also posits a kind of continuum and calls it the space-time causation. Desha kala nimitta. Time, space, causation. Let me read a little from Swami Vivekananda, who explains this. We think in time. Our thoughts are bound by time. All that exists in time and space, and all is bound by the law of causation. If we think of a billiard table, and someone hits the cue ball, and it goes and it strikes other balls, and they're moving around. This is a perfect example. A ball is struck, it moves in space, and it moves through time, and it strikes another ball, and that ball in turn moves and strikes other balls, and the balls move. So that's the causation. Causation can only take place in space and time. The three are interrelated. They're inextricably intertwined. And Swami Vivekananda points out that these three that our mind is limited by these three, even defined by these three in a sense. Time, space, and causation are the three conditions through which mind perceives, he says. Time is the condition for the transmission of thought, and space for the vibration of grosser matter. Causation is the sequence in which vibrations come. Mind can only cognize through these. Anything, therefore, beyond mind must be beyond time, space, and causation. So And then he goes on to say, everything in time, space, and causation is bound. It's bound, not free. We're caught in time, space, causation. And yet we know, at least we know intellectually from our teachings, that our true nature is free. We are freedom. And we are constantly seeking to experience that freedom, to realize that freedom. How do we do that? How do we experience our true nature as freedom? How to stop the clock? How to experience the timeless? How to meet eternity? Let's turn to another incident in the life of Swami Vivekananda, also a lecture incident. This is fascinating. This is from the memoirs. I'll read from the memoirs of Mr. Thomas Allen of San Francisco, who was the usher, as I mentioned, and he would introduce Swami Vivekananda before his talks. So it was March 25, 1900, and there was a lecture to be given by Swamiji at Union Hall in San Francisco on Post Street, advertised to begin at 3 p.m. Mr. Allen writes, but at 3 p.m., Swami was not there. We waited and wondered what to do and concluded that we must just wait. Several times I went out onto the street to see if he was visible. At last, at about 3:30 p.m., I saw him slowly walking up. I went and met him and walked with him towards the hall. I said, Swami, don't you know you're late? The audience has been waiting. Swami replied, Mr. Allen, I am never late. I have all the time in the world. All time is mine. All time is mine, he says. Mr. Allen replied, well, Swami, the audience may not feel the same as you do. But Swami went on just at his same leisurely pace. Now, on the way, we had to pass a shoe shine stand. And when Swami saw that the shoe shiner was idle, he went up to him to have his shoes polished. I was silently fidgeting, thinking about the people who had come to hear the lecture, but my fidgeting did no good. At last, Swami got on the platform and was again introduced to the audience, which had more or less patiently waited for him. So, what do we make of this? A fascinating incident. Lecture is supposed to start at 3, and at 3:30 he's just leisurely walking up, and Mr. Allen says, "You're late," and he says, I am never late. I have all the time in the world. All time is mine. And then he stops to have his shoes shined. Already he knows he's late, and he stops and has his shoes shined. What's going on here? Of course, I would be ready to wait 100 hours to hear Swami Vivekananda. Maybe we might wait lifetimes to hear someone like Swami Vivekananda. So how blessed those people were to attend his lecture. But here we find Swamiji seemingly utterly indifferent to time. And American devotees were often frustrated by this facet of Swamiji. He was following the Indian Standard Time, IST, which is sometimes called Indian Stretchable Time. So we have to understand that when Swamiji was always in an exalted state of consciousness, and particularly so in Northern California in 1900. He was in transcendent consciousness. When he arrived in Alameda, when he first arrived there, Mr. Allen greeted him jovially and said, "Well, Swami, I see you are in Alameda." And Swamiji answered gravely, "No, Mr. Allen, I am not in Alameda. Alameda is in me." So this was his mood at those times, fully identified with the transcendent, identified with his true self, which is the true self of all of us, that infinite reality we call in Vedanta the Atman, the self, capital S. So the self, we are told, is not in time and space. Time and space are found within the self. So clearly the man whom we think of as Swami Vivekananda was late for a lecture. But for Swami Vivekananda himself, he was not identified with that body that we call Swamiji. He was identified with the self. So all time was his. Time is within him. For Swamiji to be late, he must be subject to time. He must be in time. But he was identified with the infinite, with the self. So he could say, all time is mine. So people would chide him often. That an impatient American devotee afraid of missing a steamer remarked to Swamiji, "Swami, you have no idea of time." And Swamiji calmly replied, "No, you live in time. We live in eternity." So, how do we live in eternity? It seems like, and one reason I chose this topic is because I always feel like I don't have enough time. I'm always running out of time. And I think most of us, many of us, perhaps most of us are feeling that way, especially in our speeded up American culture. We live in time and are bound by time, and we struggle against time, and we never win. Time always wins. But Vivekananda, he's beyond time. All time is his. In his famous letter to Mrs. Oli Bull, Sarah Bull, on the death of her father, he writes, "Coming and going is all pure delusion. The soul never comes or goes. Where is the place to which it should go when all space is in the soul? When shall be the time for entering and departing when all time is in the soul?" So there's no doubt when we study Swamiji's life, there's no doubt that he navigated this world of time and space with ineffable grace and skill. And yet he was not of it. Perhaps that is why he could navigate it so gracefully. He saw this world from an entirely different perspective. So we may not be able to become Swami Vivekananda. He was a world teacher. He came with a mission. He came as a soul perfect already in meditation. But we can learn to approach time differently, to live our life in time more gently, more attentively, more mindfully. Not to beat time, but to start to free ourselves from the tyranny of time. We mark time by change. The clock, the second hand is ticking. Thousands of thoughts pass through the mind every day, every hour, thousands of moments of awareness. For most of us, that our attention flits, those thoughts flit from one subject to another. Our attention flits from one thing to another. This is the characteristic of a restless or a distracted mind. And most of the time, our minds are like that. In meditation, we train our minds not to do that. We train our minds to focus on one subject and not to go around to so many things. And a mind starts to become one-pointed. This is a great secret to starting to free ourselves from the tyranny of time, developing a one-pointed mind. And this training of the mind, it can't just be at the time of meditation. We have to do it all the time. To do one thing at a time. This is one aspect of the training. Do one thing at a time and attend to what we are doing. Notice the rush of thoughts. Let them slow down. Expand the gap between the thoughts. Attend to the experience at hand. Be aware of it. Slowing down is very difficult in this culture of hurry. And even in the 1890s, America was very much speeded up. Swamiji constantly had to resist, he had to push back against American hurry. So there's a couple of little incidents of Swamiji that Mr. Allen records that one night when Swamiji's friend, Reverend B. Fay Mills, who was, I believe, the Unitarian minister in Oakland, he was walking with him to the train that would take him to the Oakland Mole. A mole, I had to look it up. It's also a kind of pier where ferries would take off from. There's also the mole on your skin or the mole that buries underground, but this is the same spelling. It means a pier. We don't have them anymore, I guess, but where the ferries would take off from, they called it the Oakland Mole. So Mr. Mills said, "Swami, we must hurry to catch the train." Swamiji made no change in his pace. "Is there not another train?" he asked. And a lovely interview by one reporter, a woman named Blanche Partington. It was published in one of the newspapers of that time. At the end of the interview, Blanche told Swamiji, "I must go," I said. "I have to catch a train." "That is like all Americans," smiled the Swami. And, this is beautiful, I had a glimpse of all eternity in his utter restfulness. "You must catch this car or that train always. Is there not another later?" Swamiji had a special word for this hurry. He called it indecent hurry, brutal, indecent hurry. This indecent and brutal hurry which forces us to go ahead of everyone else. So Swamiji wouldn't hurry. He refused to hurry. And there's another incident with Mrs. Hansbrough, who was his kind of secretary while he was in San Francisco. One of the Mead sisters, who was with Swamiji in South Pasadena at Vivekananda House, and she went with him to San Francisco and served as his secretary. And on the 24th of April, 1900, they were going to Camp Taylor up in Northern California. It's still there, by the way, and we visit that place sometimes. They ended up setting up camp there with a few close disciples and Swami Vivekananda, and stayed there for, I'm not sure, a couple of weeks maybe. And what a glorious camping that was with Swamiji. But so they're on their way, and to get there from the Home of Truth in Alameda, where Swamiji was staying, there was quite a series of transfers. First, they had to take a train to the Alameda ferry dock, then a ferry to San Francisco, then a second ferry to Sausalito, and finally the train from Sausalito to Camp Taylor. So they briefly hesitated at the Home of Truth because Alice Hansbrough told Swamiji, "Swamiji, I'll go with you up to Sausalito, but then I want to go to Los Angeles," because her daughter was here in LA and she wanted to go back. And Swamiji said, "Oh, well, then I'm not going." And then she said, "Oh, okay, I'll go." And so that little delay caused them to miss the first train to the docks in Alameda. So they got the next one, and their ferry was the next ferry, and then their ferry to Sausalito was the next ferry. So by the time they got to Sausalito, the train for Camp Taylor had just left. So then, and I'll read from Mrs. Hansbrough's description, they learned that there was another train on a different platform, a different line, different company that was also going that direction. So they went to that platform. And then Mrs. Hansbrough notes, this train was just getting underway when they arrived. I called to the conductor on the back platform, who called back, "If you run, I'll wait for you." I looked at Swamiji. He simply said, "I will not run." Even though the train was there within a few yards of him, he would not hurry to catch it. Well, there were no more trains that day. So we had to go all the way back to the Home of Truth in Alameda. They had to take the ferry from Sausalito back to San Francisco, another ferry back to Alameda, then the train from Alameda back to... So all of that because Swamiji wouldn't run 10 or 15 yards or whatever it was. He wouldn't run, he wouldn't rush. So on the way back, Mrs. Hansbrough said to Swamiji I remarked that we had missed the train because there was no engine hitched to our cars, poking at Swamiji. And Swamiji replied, "We couldn't go because your heart was in Los Angeles. There is no engine that can pull against a heart There's no force in the world which can pull against the heart. So it's a touching kind of teaching for Mrs. Hansbrough. But it's remarkable. I mean, I would have run. I think all of us here would have run if we were able to. It's Swamiji, I will not run. So he's pushing back against this rush. And, it goes back to the founding days of this country. I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin in his book, Advice to a Young Tradesman, written by an old one. Written in 1748. He was 42 years old, by the way. He grew to be a lot older. And this is a famous quote, but this is the original quote. Remember that time, all capitals, T-I-M-E, time, all capitals. Remember that time is money. He that can earn 10 shillings a day by his labor and goes abroad or sits idle 1/2 of that day, though he spends but 6 pence during his diversion or idleness, ought not to reckon that the only expense. He has really spent, or rather thrown away, 5 shillings besides. Because if he earns 10 shillings a day and he spent half the day not working, he's just spent 5 shillings. He's wasted 5, because time is money. So there's no room for idleness in this framework. There's no room for taking off a day from work. There's no room for spending a couple of hours in meditation. No, because time is money and we need money and we need to go, rush, get it, more. This is and this was in 1748. So it was a defining feature of life, and it's a defining feature of life today. We're constantly feeling like we should be doing more in less time. And the rush itself seems to be speeding up. I think part of it is computers. Computers are so fast that we expect them to go fast. We want to see that email right away. So we want the text message now. We want to order the latest whatever we want to order, and it should come to our doorstep within minutes. Come on. So our attention span and our patience are growing shorter with all this instant gratification of computers. And we also have this curse of multitasking, where we are doing 2 things at once, or even 3 things at once, texting while driving, or listen to a Vedanta lecture and check our email at the same time. I've heard that this actually happens. The truth is that we can't do either well. I remember once I was talking with a devotee. This was before I had learned even what texting is. And I was having a conversation with him, and there seemed to be kind of odd pauses in his response. Like I'd tell him something, and then it'd be like, he's not replying the way you'd normally reply in a conversation. There'd be like a little gap. And then you'd say, yeah, true, and we can do that. And then I said, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm chatting with someone. So he's talking with me with his voice, and he's typing on I could hear little taps on the keyboard. Oh my goodness. So he wasn't having an effective conversation with me, and quite possibly not having an effective texting. His mind is divided. How can we cultivate a one-pointed mind in meditation when in the rest of our life we are hurrying around like mad, running a rat race, trying to do 3 or even 10 things at once? That's the thing about hurry, that when we are hurrying, whatever we're doing, we're thinking about the next thing we have to do. We think, okay, I'm doing this now, but I also have to do that, and after that I'm going to do that, and after that I'm going to do that, and so I've got to do a quick click, and maybe I can do 2 things at once, well, in the meantime, to get everything finished, and go, I got to get it all done. Okay, well, let me read a beautiful passage from Vivekananda's Memoirs of European Travel. It was written originally in Bengali, a hilariously funny and also deeply insightful and analytical essay about the West versus the East versus the West. And this is a beautiful passage. The Gita, he writes that the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and the sacred waters of the Ganga, the holy river Ganges, the Gita and the sacred waters of the Ganga constitute the Hinduism of the Hindus. Last time I went to the West, I also took a little of it with me, fearing it might be needed. And whenever opportunities occurred, I used to drink a few drops of it. And every time I drank, in the midst of the stream of humanity, amidst that bustle of civilization, that hurry of frenzied footsteps of millions of men and women in the West, the mind at once became calm and still, as it were. That stream of men, that intense activity of the West, that clash and competition at every step, those seats of luxury and celestial opulence, Paris, London, New York, Berlin, Rome, all would disappear. And I used to hear that wonderful sound of Hara, Hara, to see that lonely forest on the sides of the Himalayas, and feel the murmuring heavenly river coursing through the heart and the brain, and every artery of the body, and thundering forth, Hara, Hara. How he describes that the frenzied footsteps of millions of men and women. And he knows the danger of this kind of life. In the stress and hurry of our materialistic life, he writes, our nerves lose sensibility and become hardened. The older we grow, the longer we are knocked about in the world, the more callous we become, and we are apt to neglect things that even happen persistently and prominently around us. So, what's the remedy? Slow down, slow down. Do one thing at a time. Actually, when we do one thing at a time and put our whole attention on it, we can do it very well. And we can also do it efficiently. Amazing. We can do things more efficiently when we carefully choose what we are going to do, and we put our whole mind onto it, and we do it with full attention. And guess what? We start to get some satisfaction. We get satisfaction when we can put our whole mind and heart in what we are doing. How are we going to offer what we do? How are we going to make what we do an offering to the Lord if we're not thinking of what we're doing? We're just doing it automatically. So Swami Vivekananda would ask his disciples also, don't hurry, writing to his disciples, do not be anxious, do not be in a hurry. Slow, persistent, and silent work does everything. The Lord is great. We will succeed, my boy. We must. Blessed be his name. And again, nothing shall be done in haste. Purity, patience, and perseverance are the three essentials to success. And above all, love. All time is yours. There is no indecent haste. Everything will come right if you are pure and sincere. So no hurry, and therefore no worry. Hurry brings worry right in its train. Or at least if we don't hurry, we can have less worry. At the same time, Swamiji, of course, he was so late. He was 45 minutes late for a lecture in San Francisco. He seemed to be beyond time. He seemed to be completely oblivious of time. And yet, he could be incredibly efficient and speedy when he needed to be. And Frank Rodahamel, another one of his students in San Francisco, gave this fascinating reminiscence. He writes, his personal appearance on my first interview was a pleasurable shock from which I have never fully recovered. He had on a long gray dressing gown and was sitting cross-legged on a chair, smoking a pipe. His long hair falling in wild disarray over his features. This interview was continued 15 minutes beyond the time set for our class on Raja Yoga to be held in the front room of the house. We were interrupted by the lady in charge of affairs, that must be Mrs. Hansbrough, rushing into the room and exclaiming, "Why, Swami, you have forgotten all about the yoga class. It is 15 minutes past time now and the room is full of people." The Swami arose hastily to his feet, exclaiming to me, "Oh, excuse me, We will now go to the front room. I walked through the hall to the front room. He went through his bedroom, which was between the room we had been sitting in and the front room. Before I was seated, he emerged from his room with his hair neatly combed and attired in his sannyasin robe. Not more than 1 minute had elapsed from the time he started from his room with disheveled hair and in lounging attire, till he came leisurely out into the front room ready to lecture. Speed and precision of action were evidently at his command. So this is beautiful. This is a sign of a mind fully mastered, a mind under the control of its owner. Swami Vivekananda, fully a master of his body and mind. When he needed to, he could comb his hair, take off his lounging attire and put on his robe and be ready to lecture in under a minute. Amazing. No hurry, but when needed, speed and precision. Hurry suggests harriedness, no? Rushing haplessly and making mistakes along the way. Haste makes waste. It's not a joke, it's actually true. With an uncontrolled mind thinking of all the other things that need doing. But when we slow down, we can actually be more efficient. I read a tip on how to improve your typing speed. How do you improve your typing speed? By typing more slowly. Because at least I do this, I try to type too fast, and then I have to constantly correct mistakes. So yes, I might be typing words faster, but in the long run, it's taking me longer because I'm making so many mistakes. So the mind is like this. It can only do one thing at a time. If we're doing two things at a time, then it's flitting back and forth. So we let our mind be occupied with what it is doing and be here now. In the famous words of Ram Dass and his famous book, Be Here Now. It's a hippie book, but it's also true. It's also true. It's a very wise counsel. Now is actually the only time we can be in. Though most of us are constantly in the future and in the past in our minds. We can only be here and now. Even when we're thinking about the past, we're doing it right now. Those memories are arising in our mind in this present moment. If we're thinking about the future, worrying about the future, stressing about the future, we're doing it right now. That hasn't come yet. It's only now. All the past and all the future are here in the present, says Swami Vivekananda. Nobody ever saw the past. When you think you are knowing the past, you only imagine the past in the present moment. To see the future, you would have to bring it down to the present, which is the only reality. The rest is imagination. This present is all that is. There is only the one. All is here right now. So be here now. One moment in infinite time is quite as complete and all-inclusive as every other moment. All that is and was and will be is here in the present. Let anybody try to imagine anything outside of it, he will not succeed. So he understands that right now is when we experience everything. Right now. How do we realize this? How do we be here now? Sometimes I have a theory that why do we crave sense experience? Why do we crave intensely pleasurable experiences? Because for a moment, our minds are stilled in the intensity of that experience, and we rest in the present moment. That experience of, say, and it has to be a really good one, but some kind of really good confection, full of juicy tastes and maybe chocolate and whatever it is, and you put it in your mouth and it explodes into this ecstasy of flavor filling your whole mouth and like, wow. And for a moment, your thoughts are stilled. For a moment, you are in the present experience of that strong, intense sense experience. Of course, the problem with sense experience is it passes very quickly, and they're like, wow, that was good. I want another one. And then it sets up this whole cycle of craving and overeating and whatever, all those things come in its train. But the experience itself, for a moment, we are lifted into that present moment. We're pulled into that present moment. Same with, say, a strikingly beautiful sunset, say, or a strikingly moving piece of music. For a moment, we are lifted. We are lifted beyond this present moment into this ineffable experience of the present moment where we are just here now, and we're not remembering the past and we're not projecting about the future. We're just in this moment. And that is actually the radiance of our true self. So through practice, we learn to become established in that awareness without needing that piece of music or that sunset or that sweet or whatever it is that we're using. By learning to train our attention and direct it, keep it tied here to the present moment, to keep it tied to what we are doing. It's interesting to note about Swami Vivekananda that though he seemed so careless here in America about time, but for his brother monks and the monastery that he set up, he was extremely strict about sticking to the routine of doing things at the right time. And the monks were expected to attend their study classes and meditation periods in time, and a bell was rung. So at a certain point, he instituted the rule, the bell will be rung at 4 a.m., and at 4:30, everyone has to be in the shrine for meditation. And Swami Akhandananda, one of his brother disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, he remembers this. One night, at a time when the mutt, the monastery, was located at Neelambar Babu's garden at Belur, there were discussions on Vedanta, which continued up to 2 o'clock in the morning. So they're up all night talking about Vedanta. Towards the end, the matter for debate centered round the question whether the soul is reborn after death, and later, whether a person is reborn as lower animals or not. So they had a long debate on this. Swamiji remained neutral and generally silent, but at times he supplied arguments to the losing side. At last he stopped it at 2 o'clock. Everybody went to sleep. But just at 4 a.m., Swamiji asked me, Swami Akhandananda, to ring the rising bell. He was by then walking up and down, singing to himself after his morning ablutions. Seeing me hesitating, he said to me, "Ring the bell, let them all wake up. I cannot see them sleeping anymore." I replied, "They all went to sleep only 2 hours ago. Let them sleep a little more." But in a firm voice, Swamiji said, "They went to sleep at 2, so they will get up at 6? Is that your plea? All right, give me the bell. I will ring it. Are we starting this mutt for sleeping?" Then I rang the bell quite vigorously, and everybody got up crying, "Who was that? Who are you?" If I were alone, perhaps they would have finished me. But when they saw Swamiji smiling behind me, they one by one went to the adjoining rooms on the other side, yawning and rubbing their eyes. So why is this? Why was Swamiji so strict about this? It's because, I think, the extremes look alike. Swamiji's untimeliness stemmed from the fact that he dwelt in the consciousness beyond time. But if we are late, it's not because we are dwelling in that consciousness beyond time. It's because we are lazy, or we are inefficient, or we are inconsiderate of other people's times. They look the same. 2 people come late to a lecture. One of them is Swami Vivekananda, and he's late because all time is his, and he dwells in that realm beyond time. And the other because she was late getting up. She took a nap and couldn't get up. This is the difference between sattva and tamas. The extremes look alike. All right, I think we're coming to a close. I would like to chant a powerful verse from Shankaracharya on the inevitability of time, from a hymn, a craving forgiveness to Lord Shiva. Ayurnashyati pashyatam pratidinanyati kshayam yauvanam pratyayanti gatah punarna divasa kalo jagadbhakshakah lakshmi stoyataranga bhanga chapala vidyuchalam jivitam tasman mam sharanagatam sharanada tvam raksha rakshaduna. Day by day does one come nearer to death. One's youth wears away. The day that is gone never returns. Almighty time devours everything. Fickle as ripples on water is the goddess of fortune. Life passes by like a flash of lightning. O Shiva, O giver of shelter to those that come to thee for refuge, protect me who have taken refuge at thy feet. When we reflect on this inevitability of time and on the really time as a destroyer of our youth, a destroyer of our health, a destroyer of our lives, a destroyer of everything. Everything is crumbling into dust. So, no matter how much we strive always to keep things up, if we weren't constantly painting this building and sweeping, everything is crumbling into dust. Time is the all-destroyer. When we reflect on this, doesn't it turn our minds to that which does not change, that which is beyond time? Doesn't it turn our minds to the divine? And doesn't that make us seek intensely? Swami Brahmananda says, life is fast flowing like a river. The day that is gone can never come back. So make the best use of your time. Crying out, alas, alas, at the last moment will be of no avail. So take to your spiritual practices in all earnest. Make up your mind to realize your goal or die in the attempt. Death is certain. It may come today or tomorrow. Even if you lose your life in trying to attain God, it is not loss, but a positive gain. So, this is the last word I want to share with you, this idea. Let us see that, yes, time is destroying everything. Let us strive to attain the timeless. Let us strive to find the timeless in every moment, because if we can drop our fears for the future and our regrets for the past and focus on this present moment, we start to taste the timeless. And at the same time, let us dive into our spiritual practice, because we know death is coming. Our life is coming to an end. Every day brings us one day closer to that day when we're going to leave this body. Let us do our practices. Let us learn to train our mind. Let us learn to focus our attention now, giving up hurry, giving up worry, doing one thing at a time, learning to be here now in this present luminous moment, to stand where we have always been standing, in the presence of the divine, the timeless, the eternal. Thank you. next week our speaker will be Swami Vivekananda, and his topic is No Treasure Equals Contentment. If you're here for the first time, I offer my warm welcome to you on behalf of all of us. We have a bookshop. We'll have some refreshments after the talk, God willing. And I will go to the greenhouse living room, the room right beside the bookshop, for some discussions and chit-chat or questions as we like. Coming up in October is Durga Puja in Santa Barbara. I'm just looking at the date. The 12th of October is the date, but we have the chanting of every year, as you know, the 9 nights associated with Durga Puja, the 10 days, the Navaratri. It's starting on the October 2nd, and it goes to October 12th. That actually sounds like 10 days. Many of us pledge to do a little more spiritual practice during those days, and we make a pledge of japa, of repeating our mantra more, or oftentimes chanting a different mantra, this Jai Shri Durga, glory to Divine Mother Durga. And some people pledge to do 1,000 a day, or even 5,000 a day, or a few bold souls pledge 10,000 repetitions a day. So it's a time to dive a little deeper into spiritual practice and into particularly focusing on our Divine Mother. Any other announcements? Okay, well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you on time and going beyond time, stopping the clock. And I will close with a chant. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritangamaya aviravirma edhi rudrayate dakshinam mukham tena mam pahi nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om, peace, peace.